Or, I mean, and then they can ask their questions. How do you want to proceed, Vic? You supplied me with the agenda. Well, actually, Kristen supplied from previous, and I was able to do what I thought was some research to get some pertinent information to the group. I can share that information first, and then they can ask questions, or vice versa.
Is that fine with you?
Yeah, that's fine.
All right. Just so I was just going to say, the email that I received from Kristen, right?
What's my name again?
No. I didn't want us to not be prepared, so I gave it to him so he could share with Sue, and they figured if there was.
I thought I copied you.
You did.
Oh, okay. I'm sorry. I didn't even notice that.
I didn't exclude that.
Yeah, actually, I printed out the one you
I'm an inclusive
sent.
person.
No, I did. I made sense. And I actually, there's so many emails. I'm not sure who sent, but this one specifically is.
But I just wanted to let's all be on the same page.
Absolutely.
And but that was great. So go ahead.
Let's do the restraint piece first,
since
since we kind of left off with that, and we really didn't have too much
information.
Kind of go in the same order. I'm really knowing prior. What I attempted to do is, in talking to Sue and Brad Smith, and I know, Kristen, you stopped by and picked up some information today.
Thanks for that.
From Brad. He had already given me that, but that's, what I attempted to look at, and we don't have to do it necessarily the order, but look at the policy, look at our current practice, look at training, try to provide you folks with what we're currently doing. You can then make some comments, because that's how it was started, where the training's at, what we're currently doing, maybe what we need to improve. I had a discussion, a detailed discussion, I know the two of you have with Irene Fort, and she's going to follow up with you, weather permitting, tomorrow. Teresa, I say weather permitting, because I think you're coming into her school tomorrow, or at least that was the plan.
Yeah, why? It might be canceled.
The weather's a little iffy for tomorrow right now. Yeah, the timing of it doesn't look good right now, but all right. Here's what we did. In the policy, and then we'll specifically speak to the policy. You all have seen the policy, and there's some issues, and I don't think actually there was any issues with, I guess the sense was, we like the policy. The question is, are you adhering to the policy as it relates to Somerset? And so again, I'm paraphrasing, I'm putting words in anyone's mouth. So what we did is we looked at specifically beyond the training. If you look at the training section, it basically says, there's two paragraphs. It says that all staff are trained in the physical restraint policy. And then it goes on to say that the principal will identify certain staff members to receive the in-depth training.
Right.
And so there's two distinctions here in separation. We have, and I think Kristen, I don't know if you made copies for individuals, but just to give you an example, this year we have 29 staff members that have gone through the in-depth training district-wide. And that's up to this point. We still have 6 more months in the year to get through, up to June to receive training. Over the past 2 years, we have 57 staff members that have received the in-depth training. That's the second paragraph, whether it be through, most of the training is through the South Coast Educational Collaborative, and we can talk a little bit about those individuals if you like or not, but that's where we've done most of our training. And previous to that, we had an in-house individual, his name is Jim Lamont, he's a special needs teacher at the middle school, who was CPI instructor certified and trained. He was trained to provide the training. He was doing that for several years. We then, the last several years, rather than send him to the additional training, which cost about $2,000 for him to do the training, we took advantage of South Coast Educational Collaborative. There's pros and cons to doing it either way. I think the bottom line is you need to make sure that whoever's doing your training is certified to do that. In both instances, we felt that those individuals were. We looked into that. In one instance, it was one of our employees. In the other instance, it's a collaborative employee, the current piece.
So, I'm sorry, you said 29 staff members this year are CPI in-depth?
Trained, correct, by the South Coast.
Okay.
Yep. And then we have a list, I think we provided it, Tristan, to you today, who those individuals are. I actually think it may not be all-inclusive. I think there's a couple of individuals who have done some training, according to at least 2 principals, that we didn't include because I didn't have verification of that. I asked them to provide it. So you may have a couple more names that are not included. I wasn't comfortable because I wasn't aware. They weren't part of training that we had them signed up and so forth. So we do have, I guess the bottom line is a team at each school that are CPI trained for this year. Now, technically, we could have added a little bit more, a few more names to the list, because technically, someone who was CPI trained last year has up until the following year. If it's 12 months. So there's some people that went to March. We just said, let's, for the sake of for this meeting, let's do January 10 to November 10 is what we did. So that's, and again, I'm going to try to capture it, and then I'll let you guys ask any questions you want in relation to that. I think one of the things that we found in reading the policy, and I ran this by the elementary principal, Sue's aware of this, is I think it's misleading when the sentence says each staff member will be trained regarding this physical restraint policy. That gives the impression that all staff are given in-depth training, meaning the 16-hour, 2-day session. That's not the case.
That wasn't my impression.
Yeah.
In fact, Irene Fortin and Judy Richardson, a couple principals we talked to, said maybe a better term, and again, maybe this would be a semantics piece, but maybe it should read, each staff member will be informed regarding the school's physical restraint policy, because that's probably more what we're currently doing, which is at the start of the year, everybody is provided a policy. The policy is reviewed by the principals. We're actually talking about this coming September, having central office take a little bit more of a role the second day. We have 2 professional days and doing more of a PowerPoint so everybody gets the same message. We're relying on 6 principals to give a similar message. You know, and so there's no guarantee, obviously. I could, you know, Sue could say, well, I thought that was important, so I'll put a little more time. I am at the middle school, maybe I don't think it's as important. I think it's easier, and Brad and Sue and I have discussed, let's maybe have all school employees get the same training. And the only way to really guarantee that is to have them all there. So we're talking about doing that for this coming September for everybody. So I mean, that's how it came. I don't want to take up the time. What I tried to do is make sure, number one, you understood. Now, one of the things I think that has been confusing is we have crisis teams at each of our schools. I did a crisis training yesterday with Bristol County Sheriff's Office. This was my little certificate they handed me. Our crisis teams aren't necessarily crisis response or CPI trained.
So
We
is
have-
that, are you referring to this list? in
No,
particular?
those lists are all trained.
These are all
They're
CPI certified?
All CPI certified trained, that's
With
right.
either a 6 or a 3-hour refresher?
Yes, yeah, that list, and that's why, what happened is when, and I just gave Victor a copy, we had a complaint lodged with DESC regarding specifically the restraint issue. That case was just closed, we just received a response from DESC saying that there were no violations of the law and or compliance issues, and as of January 13th, the department has closed the complaint. So the only complaint that was outstanding as it relates to this policy, there were some specifics I can't share with you, but you could piece them together pretty easy, what they would be. I just gave Victor his copy, he hasn't seen that. So that was January, that letter was dated to the complaint, as the 13th, we received it yesterday. So that letter came, but to answer your question, I'm not trying to bounce around, I'm trying to capture as much as I can. I think it's important that when people think of the crisis team in each of the schools, they're assuming that all those crisis team members are all CPI trained, and that's not necessarily the case. That's not their role. The CPI training we did yesterday, this crisis management we did yesterday, focused on things like, you know, what do you do when you have a bomb scare, and you know, the larger issues. So. I guess that's my quick capture. I don't think there's any disputing with the principals as to what the proper forms that need to be used and done. I think there's an issue, I don't think, there is an issue as it relates to how consistent they were using the escort form as it relates, and Irene's talked about it in a couple specific instances about what we need to do in relation to school districts that are either incorporating into the child's IEP and or conducting a waiver, and I saw some of the emails kind of going. I think the good news is, as a result of this, there's a plan in place. I know Irene wants to speak to a couple of parents specifically about a way I think that makes sense for future reference.
Well, what is that? Can you share that now?
What?
What the way is for?
She wants to incorporate it into an IEP, into the child's plan, and have it agreed by the, and that's what districts are doing.
Right.
I don't think it was I can tell you from the principal's perspective, I worked with her 17 years, it was not done intentionally. Her interpretation was that
Of course.
the log that they were keeping, which was not part of this policy, was sufficient. When, if you look at this policy book, the way it's currently written, a form should have been filled out, and that wasn't happening. So I think up front, if you recall, and I think it became somewhat confrontational. It wasn't intentional, but I mean, I think I have to, you know, to be upfront with, as a result of the meeting, it was clear that when we met with the elementary principals, and this is primarily on an elementary piece, I mean, there aren't quite as many at the middle school and high school. I'm not saying it can't exist, the policies for all the schools, but when we met with the elementary principals, that's when it came up that, well, no, we're not doing that. And I was like, okay, and I wasn't looking to hammer people, I was like, okay, why aren't we doing it then?
Right.
And the answer was, well, our interpretation was, and I'm like, well, the good thing, from my perspective, I thought my principals kind of were on board to say, okay, let's fix it. let me communicate to people, and that was my discussion as late as, in fact, I told Irene what I was gonna be saying. When I keep saying Irene, I'm assuming all parents know what I'm talking about, the principal here at North. I shared with her what I'm sharing with you right now, and because I didn't want there to be, if she had a different take on it, I said, let me know what it is, so I can kind of communicate that. So that's, I've tried to cover, let me see, training, reporting, and just to capture it, we'll answer any questions, but what I want this group to understand is, listen, if you give one of us a piece and you want us to look into something, we'll look into it. I mean, and
Great.
sincerely, I think the administrators were on board to say, listen, if we're not doing something, I'm gonna tell you I'm not doing it, and we'll tell you why, and we'll fix it if
That's
it
what
needs to be fixed.
yeah, that's exactly what we're doing, and to be honest with you, we felt that if those poor teachers had to fill out a form
For some
every
of our
time
kids.
they held reading
For some of our kids,
we
yeah.
definitely would, that's, however, I will say, I don't know if I want it in my IEP, because, it would really depend on who's doing the escorting.
Yep.
It would have to be very specific. But
Yeah,
that's,
Yeah,
that's,
and that's
that's
an
a
individual
case by
case,
case.
and she wasn't suggesting that was the only way to do it, because there are other ways to do it, but she was saying I'm
So it can
gonna
be
talk.
open, right.
Right, okay, well, I think that's a great start. So basically what you're saying is that we brought up this
Issue
concern,
of staff being
this
trained,
concern
yep,
about staff being trained.
yep.
Up until this year, or through this year, there hasn't been a formal training of all staff as it states in the policy. And that's something you're planning to change in September. I'm paraphrasing, that's
Yeah.
kind of what I heard from you.
I think, I guess, it's not far off, and I would say that we train all staff, but the definition of training is to inform them what the policy is, make them aware of the forms, but it's not in-depth training.
Yeah.
The comments I had with the principals that, if you look at these two paragraphs, and that's why I use the term, the first paragraph probably should read, each staff will be informed regarding the policy, if that's what, because that's really kind of what we're
Or an
doing.
overview, it's not in-depth, it's
It's
an overview.
not training, it's not a 6 or 3 hour
They're
training.
no, we didn't expect
Yeah.
it to be a 6 or
Right,
8 hour
right.
training.
Just an
Even a
overview.
15-minute training
Yeah.
where they actually went in, because I'm just being honest,
Yeah.
the contacts who I have said that they weren't even aware of the policy.
Well, and I think that's
And
why
of
we
course,
came.
this is
That's
multiple
important,
buildings
yeah.
across the board, as you said, you know,
Yeah.
different people implement it differently. So it was a legitimate concern for us to raise with you, is that maybe
That's
this
good,
isn't,
yeah.
you know, maybe
Yes.
this isn't being done
I agree.
across the board to the extent
I
that the
agree.
policy outlines.
I agree. In fact, that's why I referenced that second day, because in my discussion with Sue and Brad, I think we take for granted that the packets of information, I've been there, done that, I was a teacher, that everybody's in depth reading this and going through it in the opening couple days of school. I think that may be an assumption we shouldn't take.
Right, well,
Rightfully
like-
so. They're looking at the priorities of getting their classroom. So I think we're talking about a PowerPoint presentation,
Yep.
incorporating us, sending a
That's the
message,
first
and like you said, maybe it's 15 minutes, it doesn't need to be 6 hours.
Right,
But
right,
there
right.
needs to be, I think, some increased emphasis in this area, and we're sharing with you that we intend to do that.
So that'll
Well,
be
I
a
mean-
district-wide, yeah.
And that
Yes.
protects your teachers and your paraprofessionals as well, because something
Yeah.
that I did know
Right.
on
the policy.
your, you know, one of the things that I did know on the CPI trained teams is that I noticed at Chase Street, there's not a single person in the preschool who is trained. No paraprofessionals are listed here at Chase Street. And having been a paraprofessional at
Yeah,
Chase Street
that's
in the
a more
preschool,
significant
that's a
classroom.
really, that's, you know,
Yeah,
that would be
let's go
something
back
that
to
you would
2
want to
years.
pay more attention to,
Yeah.
definitely.
I think we're gonna have to, I'll say, I don't disagree, Kristen, in fact, what I would say, in my discussion with the principals, and I had this discussion with Sue and Brad,
Yeah.
I think we're gonna have to be a little bit more directive in relation to who we feel needs to be trained. I think we open the training up,
Yeah.
we encourage them, I think we're gonna have to identify some staff.
See you.
Yes.
Move down a little maybe, all over the
Oh.
place here.
We're gonna group down.
It's like we're all up here and half the.
That's fine.
No, not at all.
Wow,
Wow.
you gave me the little.
Lower
Wow.
No, thanks.